Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of announcing to you that we are going to make an effort to repeat the old reveille. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Cimarron's Big Guns. I'm here today with Charles Hudson, who has worked for us for a very long time. Charles, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Everything's good.
Good. So let's start at the beginning. You've been selling guns for a really long time. Why don't you tell me about your first couple of jobs doing that?
Okay, well, I've been selling guns since 1967. I worked for Target when they carried a lot of guns. I managed a Target store, and then I went to Oshman's and was a store manager there, and an assistant manager, and a gun manager. I stopped working for Oshman's because I talked to Mike Harvey, and he was looking for someone, and I was trying to look for a change, and so I started working for Mike late 1979. And I'm still working for him today, selling guns.
So tell me a little bit about the first time you met my dad in the late 70s.
Well, I was a black powder fan, and he owned Bigfoot primitive weapon, and that's basically all he sold. And I was real interested in black powder since I was shooting them since I was 14 years old. And I decided I'd like to do that, and so when I ran into the store, he was in there. It was a Saturday, if I believe, and he was looking for some help, and I said, well, I'm available. So he hired me right on the spot, and I went to work for him, running the store for him.
So tell me a little bit about the Bigfoot days. What was the store like back then?
Well, I thought it was a great store. That was my favorite store. It was kind of a small store, but we only carried primitive weapons like black powder guns, black powder muzzle loaders. There was a gentleman named Chris Hurst that worked there. I was actually taking his place, and he was building the guns. And Mike was actually building him one too. He built a Hawkins while I was there. And a lot of interesting people came in there that, they wanted to sell guns. Actually, they sold just about everything they brought in the store, and I basically bought everything. Kind of irritated Mike because he would never know what I'd bring in the store and buy in the store. I think the weirdest thing I bought in Texas Jack's was a skull, human skull.
What was the story behind that?
Well, there was a gentleman named Mike Van Tritek. I got it from him, and he was Special Forces, and he got it over there in some African country. He brought it back, and he wanted to know if I wanted it, so I made a trade and ended up with that. And then Mike came in and saw that and said, "Get rid of it." But I had bought all kinds of weird stuff, but he kept most of it. Still has it today, as far as I know.
So this was a store on Gessner in Houston in a small strip mall.
The address
not very big.
Yeah, and the address is 1951 North Gessner.
Yep. And like you said, a lot of interesting people came in there. I think it was kind of a hub. I mean, I was a kid growing up in that store, so my memories are a little vague, but tell me what a typical work day was like there.
Well, what was good about it, a typical work day, you never know who's coming through that door and what they're going to bring in to sell or trade, and I really enjoyed that. That's one thing I really love to do is, trade, and I like talking to people, and we've had so many interesting people come through that store.
And you worked a lot with my mom, who I think was pregnant with me when you started there.
Right.
So do the math.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, your mother was we were great friends, and I miss her dearly. And we just got along so well all those years. And she, like I said, she was with me when we bought out Allen Firearms. That's where we're at Bigfoot's when we bought Allen Firearms, and that's basically when Cimarron basically began. And Mike sure got a lot of odd parts and all kind of weird stuff when he bought that company out, and he finally got to move everything out. But that was really interesting when he bought that company out.
Because back then it was really just you and my mom working during the week, and then my dad would come in on the weekends because he was still working at a bank job.
Right, that is correct. He would work every other weekend. Mm-hmm. So everybody wouldn't wonder who he was.
Yeah. People thought you were my dad.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody didn't know Mike, and they always come in when he's working. Now, when they'd come back and see me, and they'd always ask me who he was. Mary Lou was very protective about you, though. I remember that.
Of course.
So.
Yeah, I just remember doing like inventory when there was just one little room with about 20 guns in there,
right.
And I was like just learning to count and things like that. Anyways, so then we moved the store to another strip mall on Katy Freeway in about 88, maybe?
I'm thinking, I think it was more like 87.
Okay.
87, because we were there 4 years on the Katy Freeway. Mm-hmm. And we went into bows at that time. Mm-hmm. And we were selling bows and guns, of course.
And what was on the front of the building at that time? It was no longer called Bigfoot, it was
Old West.
Mm-hmm.
Old West was the name of the store. Old West Gun and Bow, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And that was about the same size store, actually. It was another narrow store, but we had a lot of, remember, we got broken in several times there.
Yes. People drove through the front of the store.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in the business, I know it kind of fell off a little bit. I didn't get the guns because Bigfoot, it seemed like we got a lot of people coming in wanting to sell. Mm-hmm. And when we moved to Katy, that kind of stopped. We didn't get as much neat items that come in the store.
Why do you think that was?
I don't know. I think it's just the area. You're in a little upper class area than where Gessner was. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what it was.
So around the time that we moved to Katy Freeway would have also been when Cimarron was really starting to
get
form,
going, right?
And SAS too, all the early cowboy action stuff in Texas.
We had the first club meetings at that store on Katy Freeway, and that was the first single action club in the state of Texas at that time. Mm-hmm. And that was the Historical Shooting Society, and it began in our store.
About how many people would come to those early meetings?
To be honest with you, 10 to 15, really, because it was Nick Nixon that really helped me get the club going. And then we went over, of course, they went over to collectors and got some more people to help out. And that's how the club began. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did work change in those days as Cimarron started to become more of a known name?
Busy, because when I got stores non-stop at that point because everything was done by hand. The calls were taken. We had to write up the orders by hand. I had to ship them by hand. And it really, I think the last order there was $1 million order. That was the biggest order, Mike. And then what happened was customs came in the store just when we received that large order.
I was just going to say. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, they came in, flashed their badges. Well, first they asked me a few questions about the product. And of course, I told them it was a Cimarron gun made by Uberti, and it's a clone copy of Colt. And so the next thing I know, they're whipping out their badges and telling me that they're going to have to shut us down because the markings on the guns were improperly done. And then I kind of argued with them because they get cleared through custom. Mm-hmm. We have nothing to do that. If there was a problem with that particular deal, they should have contacted us up there. Mm-hmm. But instead, they just shut us down, and we had all this product stuck, and we couldn't do anything with it. We couldn't sell it. We couldn't do anything, and Mike had all his money tied up. It was a really hard times.
And how long were we shut down for?
We couldn't sell those guns for over 3 months.
Yeah, my mom picked me up from school crying that day that happened.
Yeah.
There were stickers on the store door that said like offender Mike Harvey.
Violator
Mike Harvey. Yeah.
That's his nickname.
But anyways, we made it out of that, and life went on.
Yes.
So then in the early 90s, we moved over to Wisterwood in Houston, which was an interesting little conglomerate office and living space of a few interesting fellows.
Yes. We had the downstairs is Bigfoot, and we carried, that's when we first got into Old West Clothing, when we moved into that store. And so Cimarron was upstairs, and these stairs were 90-degree angles, unbelievable stairs. And I had to run up and down the stairs all day long, waiting on people and running Cimarron and taking phone calls, and it was really tough on me.
Yeah. And then came the big move to Fredericksburg in 93. So what happened with you at that point?
Well, 93, I was going to have a problem with Mike wanting to move, but I could not do that because of my wife. She works for a Southwestern Bell company, and we couldn't up and move her. So I couldn't move. I did move the company with him, and I worked weekends at that point. Every weekend I'd go from Houston to Fredericksburg and work the weekend and go right back home. So that was really long.
Yeah.
Long 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when we were on Milam here.
Milam in Maine, yes. And actually Cimarron was in there. And I think they were there. I'm trying to think. They were there almost 3 years. Cimarron and Texas Jacks were together. So it was a big deal. And Mike finally got a deal on the building on North Adams Street where we moved everything. We did it all in the nighttime. I actually moved everything in the night, middle of the night. I worked all night, moving the stuff from Maine to Milam.
And that's when Cimarron separated off into its own building.
We had to get our own license. Texas Jacks had to get their own firearms license, and it went pretty smooth though. Texas Jacks really developed soon as we moved to Adams Street. We enlarged actually 4 times the square foot in the deal, and it was nice.
And so what do you think about where the businesses are today compared to when you first started out?
Well, it's Mike and you have done such a great job. There's no comparison of the stores today and what it was when I had it, because we were dealing with a low budget. Mike did everything on his own. He used his own money to start this business. He did it himself. So I take my hat off to him because he had actually built it on his own with Mary Lou, of course, but it is now, it's always been a family-owned business, which that's what I really like about it. Of course, I like everybody in the family. Grew up with them basically myself.
So tell me a couple of stories about like some of the movies that we've worked with over the years and how that came about.
Oh, we did a lot of movies. Riley Flynn, I worked with him a lot over the years. The biggest movie that I really did was Quick and the Dead. We supplied it was 17 fully engraved guns for the movie set. And Virgil Graham was doing our engraving at that time. He was a master engraver. He was in all kind of books, and he just did a fantastic job on our guns. And he's passed away. He's been passed away for quite a few years now, but man, he was such a great engraver, and he did most of our guns back then.
Mike is always coming home and saying, look what Charles found, look what Charles got, and he'll have just some holy grail gun or, a Bolin bolo tie, which is missing.
Yeah.
But even this is a Charles find, and I don't want you to give away all your secrets. How can you do it?
Well,
so
what
consistently?
started all that was Bigfoot, because the people coming in, they'd bring all these neat stuff in, and I would buy everything and just about walk through the door. And then I started searching for items, and I do that still today. I go out every day looking for the unusual pieces, and but the main deal, it was Bigfoot, because I'd bought so many gun collections up, and I looked for guns all over the place. I picked up a lot of neat guns, and there's a lot of stories behind a lot of the guns, and some are famous guns that came through the store. Mm-hmm. Mike owns them, and he has a large collection, and I believe he's going to be opening up eventually a museum with all his guns.
That's the plan. Yep.
So I'm still looking, and hopefully still find some good deals.
You know, I think it's going to be a dangerous day when you get on the internet and you start. That's a whole new frontier. Like, we almost don't want to tell you about it because it's just like.
Well, I don't. As you know, I don't do internet. I'm like an old school guy.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Like, what? I know Mike is. I can't remember the specific items, but Mike has talked about a couple deals that you would bring in, and he would turn them down, and he's like kind of passed on the deal of a lifetime. Like.
Yeah. Well, we had a very large collection come in the store, and it was a lifetime collection because it had Henrys in it, Dragoons. Just about any original old gun was in this collection. But it wasn't that he turned that one down. We didn't have enough. We couldn't come up with enough capital to buy that one. But it would have been a major deal if we'd have come up with that particular collections. Now, I bought guns he didn't have money for, and I still wrote him out, and he had to cover it. But he was happy later when he got the gun.
Yeah.
My house is, if you see my house, you can't hardly move in it. I got stuff all over. I got all these showcases, and they're just plumb full of stuff. And I buy just about anything unusual. I like unusual things. I just recently bought this 150-year-old mask. It's some kind of a coin silver, and it's totally covered with turquoise beads all over, and it's got teeth in it.
Whoa.
It is unbelievable. I just bought that, and it's cool.
I know, when we get out of here, we're gonna have to go estate sailing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the estate sales are great, especially in Kerrville, because that's where everybody goes and passes away.
Wow. All right. I think that's it.
All righty.
Yep.
Well, it's
Thanks
nice
for
talking to you guys.
Oh,
Nice
good talking to
talking
you.
to you
All right,
too.
we're
And
gonna do
hopefully
it.
I'll still be